Bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs, we got bows, TKOs, yeah. Bows, TKOs.
Bows and TKOs. We are live, episode 54, coming at you on this beautiful Thursday afternoon in the Valley, and boy, is it hot. I have my best friend, his wife, and daughter on their way to come visit for the weekend, a quick little weekend, and we're talking like 108 degrees, high 80s at night or early in the morning. So welcome to the Valley. About time. We will be having lots of pool time. But anyways, episode 54, a massive loaded show for you guys. I'm your host, Shane Gillette. Again, weekly MMA podcast. And when I mean loaded show, that's why it's taken till Thursday. Lots of preparation here. Got my old Sony A64 camera back a month later to get that SD card slot fixed. Not using the old camera, so don't have to worry about overheating and only recording for an hour type of thing. But we have some fights that have been announced, some fights that have been canceled. We have PFL action. We're recapping the Salt Lake City last week, previewing PFL Sioux Falls. This week, looking at what's booked for the PFL playoff thus far. We have the Bellator Dublin, Ireland recap, Ultimate Fighter episode 3 and 4 recap, Saudi Arabia card that happened early last Saturday, and previewing the massive UFC 303 pay-per-view this weekend. Can't wait! But let's jump right in. So we have Tai Tuivasa taking on Jairzinho Rozenstruik for UFC 305 in Perth. Tai Tuivasa back in with a, more consistent striker, non-grappler, and same for Jairzinho. That's going to be a banger. We have Dan Ige and Chepi Mariscal for July 20th. Dan Ige with a new opponent. Little bummed, but still going to be a scrap. A really, really good scrap. We have Joel Alvarez and Elves Brenner for the August 3rd card. Really excited for that one. And then Gilbert Burns just getting thrown the gauntlet. Last JDM. Now he has Sean Brady on the September 7th fight card. That'll be a 5-rounder main event. Super stoked for that one. And then just booked today, a really good women's scrap. Jessica Andrade, Natalia Silva, September 7th on that Gilbert Burns card as well. And then in Paris, we have William Gomes and Joe Anderson Brito for that September 28th card. Of all the turmoil we've had in the UFC the past couple weeks, including this 303 card, it has not stopped. We have Macy Barber out in the main event against Rose Namajunas next weekend. Really bummed about that. There was some beef there, a lot of potential for Rose to show out in Denver, but she is getting Tracy Cortez on short notice, which is still a good scrap. And then due to injury, Gilbert Urbina pulling out of the Denver card. Mike Malott wanting to get a new opponent. Then his team said no because he was actually nursing an injury as well. So new main event, the Mike Malott fight completely off. Hopefully they find something to rebook. And then kind of out of nowhere, I guess we should have eventually expected something, but Arman Sarukian suspended 9 months and a $25,000 fine for the fan altercation at UFC 300. He just started laying on some dude. He can reduce this to 6 months if he completes an anti-bullying PSA. His team has already announced that he plans on doing that. So if he gets it down to 6 months, he could still fight Islam for the title in Madison Square Garden in November. So nothing really that new except he's technically suspended and has to pay 25 racks. And then just funny UFC news, the Bussin' With the Boys had their annual beer games, which is just a crazy, rowdy beer pong, do this, do that, champion this, competing. There was videos of Michael Chandler doing some ground and pound jokingly with some people. And at the end of the night, early evening, I would say probably 7, 8 Eastern, Michael Chandler, there you had him videoed, passed out by the pool. I'm sure as a family man and a little lightweight guy that doesn't drink a few too many beers can get the job done quick. Michael Chandler, Iron Mike, having some fun with the boys. Would be interested to see how he felt the next day. So we have a lot of PFL action. They're in the mix of finishing their regular season to set up their playoffs for fall. This past weekend, we had the heavyweights and the lightweights getting after it in Salt Lake City. And there was a lot of drama there with a lot of fights rebooked, opponents rematched. The PFL isn't escaping the injury bug either. But we had Mads Burnell in the main event with a unanimous decision over Clay Collard. I didn't expect that, but Mads really just grappled his way to victory against Clay, which has been done. That's the path to victory. So a little bit of a shocker in the main event. And then chaos here as former UFC fighter Impa Kasagane with a round 2 TKO over Jacob Nadeau. He was completely rocked early in the first round. Looked like it was going to be another upset. Was able to prevail, get into the second round, and then he was able to get a finish of his own. Impa getting some crazy, chaotic fights going down. And then we had Bruno Miranda with a split decision victory over Patricky Freire. And as Patricky does these days, he just went for broken early in round 1, came in, brought the fight, put the heavy hands on him, landed some good shots, but completely gassed himself out and didn't have a ton left in round 2, let alone round 3. Bruno Miranda getting a close decision win there. And then Rob Wilkinson, another close split decision victory over Joshua Silveria. That was a very close fight. Brett Primus, the OG, with a round 2 rear naked choke over Solomon Renfro. And then Sada Busi, I think, had 3 opponents by the end of it, but finished short notice Andrew Sanchez by round 3 TKO. Wasn't a lot of excitement there. I'm part of a Pick'ems MMA thing. A lot of big names on MMA Twitter. Being able to make picks, and then the last person standing, it's like a survivor pool, is going to win $2,500. I'm one of 11 left from quite a bit of people, and they were chatting in there that they thought the PFL or Bellator would have a better performance than UFC. I talk about this all the time, and I don't think the PFL delivered, let alone Bellator. Although Saudi Arabia had a mix of issues and controversy, I thought it was clearly, we were watching the NFL while the PFL could maybe be, I don't even know, is it the XFL, the UFL, the UFFL, whatever the hell that league is now. It's just the production, the quality of fights is just never quite there. You would expect the Clay Collard fight to go good. It was a decent fight, but not a lot of scrapping. And Patricky round 1 was fun. Impa round 1, that fight was fun, but the rest, a little bit of a snooze fest. But PFL gets another chance this weekend in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We got welterweights and featherweights. Prelims at 3 p.m. Pacific. Mañana on Friday on ESPN Plus, and the main card 7 p.m. Pacific on ESPN. So we have the big guns. We got Brendan Longnane taking on Justin Gonzalez. I'll take Brendan Longnane in that fight. He's looking good since last year when he was a little beat up from these consistent PFL seasons. You have so many fights back to back. We have Logan Storley taking on Luca Pocklet. It was supposed to be against Loriano Strapoli, but he's out, so Logan Storley getting a little bit easier of an opponent. We have Magomed Umalatov taking on Brennan Ward. That should be a fun one. I'll take Umalatov here. We have Gabriel Braga and Bubba Jenkins. Should be quite the scrap. Maybe one of the better evenly matched matchups, but I'll take Braga there. We have Lorenz Larkin taking on Alan Dominguez. I'm always going with Larkin. We got Murad Ramazanov taking on Shamil Musayev. 2 up-and-coming PFL talents, really good records. This one's probably the more intriguing fight on the card. I'm going to take Musayev here. A guy that I've really liked since I went and watched my one and only PFL event in Tacoma, Washington, in the ghetto a little bit. Timur Kizriev, whatever the hell his name is, put on a damn show, and I've enjoyed him. And I am taking him against Enrique Barzola. That should be a solid fight. We have Kai Kamaka III taking on Pedro Carvalho. 2 OGs. I'm taking Kai Kamaka. We have another OG fight here. Don Madge and Neiman Gracie. I'll take Don there. And then Tyler Diamond taking on Brett Johns. Pretty good quality fight there. I'm going to take Brett Johns. So it looks like this could potentially outperform the lightweight and heavyweight card last weekend, the last one of the regular season. And from the past 2 weeks, we have matchups announced for their PFL playoff this fall. But the interesting fights this far, ex-UFC talent, we have Talia Santos and Liz Carmouche. 2 grappling heavy women fighters, should be a really dandy there. And Brent Primus taking on Clay Collard, OG versus the young Idaho Scrapper. But we also had Bellator Dublin, little Ireland action. And the big news here was Paul Hughes' debut. Round 1, he was getting pieced up by Bobby King with some quick hands, nice work, but was able to get a takedown and some nasty ground and pound with the elbows that you can't do in the PFL and other promotions. So Paul Hughes, nice round 2 TKO for the victory there. And then in the main event, a shocker, we had Ramazan Kuramagomedov with a unanimous decision over Jason Jackson. A little bit of a snooze fest, a lot of grappling there. We had Dalton Rosta grapple his way to a majority decision over Norbert Noveni Jr. We had Durag Kelly with a round 1 guillotine choke over Matthias Porion. Kelly, an Ireland fighter, in front of the home crowd with a nice win. We had Kasum Kasumov with a unanimous decision over Mathus Matos. Kasan Magomed Sharipov with a unanimous decision over Tyler Matheson. I was watching this fight. I'm like, man, this guy's taking wild, standing on his hands, trying to do kicks, doing wild stuff. Well, with the last name Magomed Sharipov, I should have noticed. But his brother was former UFC talent. I'm blanking on his name. Zabit Magomed Sharipov, who was a awesome stylistic fan favorite fighter for the UFC, ended up with early retirement. So all eyes for me on Kasan moving forward, and Bellator had a lot of his brother in his fighting game and striking game. And then we had Sharvon Kamidov with a unanimous decision over Marceli Alves. So decent little Bellator action. The highlight for me was definitely seeing what Paul Hughes could do, seeing that he has a lot of room for growth, although he's almost 28. And Kasan Magomed Sharipov, boy, watch out. Back-to-back weeks of The Ultimate Fighter. I usually wouldn't have been able to do 4 because I would record Tuesday evening, put it out Wednesday. With my friends coming and the holidays, it's been a little chaotic. I apologize. But we had episode 3, a fantastic matchup. We had Con O'Flea, the Aussie veteran, defeating young Nathan Fletcher by decision. And Fletcher, probably the more hyped up, younger prospect, definitely had his chances. But Team Grasso is up 2-1 to Valentina, who got the first win. But this fight had absolutely fantastic grappling and striking by both fighters. Khan came forward like a veteran and brought the fight to the young Nathan right out the gates. I think Nathan was, trying to be calm, cool, collected, and measured, and that didn't work because Khan was landing the shots, getting the takedowns, controlled them. Took round 1. Round 2 was a little bit more chaos, and Nathan had his moments. But, man, these were some good-looking featherweights. I think they will both be in the UFC. So get to know Nathan Fletcher and Con O'Flea. Episode 4, Alexa Grasso. Their team goes up again, 3-1. We had a young, long, 23-year-old striker taking on the probably favorite veteran Russian fighter who is a grappling heavy fighter. And went forward, brought the fight to the young striker for Team Grasso, dominated round 1, had a lot of takedowns, didn't do a lot of damage, but took round 1, and I think he gassed himself out as the young striker who is known. They showed him watching film for a good anaconda choke, got it in, and put him to sleep. No tap, straight out put him to sleep. So Grasso Trace Valentina won. We've had some solid fights, some really good talent this year with how many foreign fighters there are. So I expect this season to put up a lot of UFC talent, not just the champions. Now, elsewhere, because this is an MMA show, let's talk about what else is going on. Well, Gordon Ryan, the number one grappler in jiu-jitsu, no-gi, gets another win, a long-awaited return at WNO 24. He got a heel hook submission, a long time coming after the nasty stomach issues he's been battling as he prepares for ADCC later this fall. And there's lots of drama in the grappling world as Craig Jones has his own CGI Invitational going on at the same day in Vegas, but at the Thomas and Mack. And he has pulled out a lot of good talents, including like the Rotolo brothers and more, because the winners of the tournament get $1 million, and they get a little bit more money, like $1 more than what the ADCC is. But it's really the grapplers kind of copying out of ADCC to try to prove that they deserve more money, and I don't disagree with that. But Gordon Ryan, Craig's nemesis, and the best grappler in the world, is promoting the ADCC. If you want to win, that's where the best competition is. And then we had the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson event supposed to happen in AT&T. Darren Till was going to box Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. on that card, but it has since been moved to Tampa. Insert Uriah Hall, also ex-UFC talent, doing his first boxing bout against the longtime OG Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. So he'll be in the undercard. I'm not sure if Darren Till's out, if he has to wait until the other card or what's going on. But, you know, these are kind of gimmicky fights anyways. But let's talk about what went down early morning Saturday, the first ever UFC event in Saudi Arabia. And if you're a boxing fan, you know this is a big deal because they have basically been funding the big boxing matches. Any super match that you've seen lately has happened because Saudi Arabia will pay the boxers what they want to make it happen, where for years and years that has not happened. So boxing's been back a little bit, aka the Ngannou Fury fight, the Fury Alexander Usyk fight, and many more. So now the UFC building that partnership, and some things have already taken place today. Dana White said maybe this week we'd get some more info about UFC, I believe 306 in the Sphere in September in Vegas. They had the Noche advertisement outside the Sphere, which if you haven't seen the Sphere, it's a big sphere. On the inside, crazy LED screen, the best of the best for events, live concerts. The UFC is going to do a one and only fight there, which is going to put Dana a lot in the hole. He's talked about spending $18 million already. It's not meant for live sports, but he's going to make it happen. So on the outside of the Sphere, you could see the advertisements, really cool graphics, but it's not Mexican Independence Day anymore. It's Saudi Arabia season sponsoring Noche UFC. So I'm sure they're putting in a pretty penny to help Dana put on what he says will be the best live sporting event of all time. And I'm pumped as long as it is a headliner or Sean O'Malley's invited to the card, because I am assuming the pay-per-view price or the price for that event is going to be at least probably a rack to get in there. And I'm not going to pay for it unless Sean O'Malley's on it probably. I'd rather watch it at home. But it is a one and only. Maybe if the card is absolutely yacked, I will pay the pretty penny to do it because, yeah, I believe Dana. I mean, the Sphere is insane. I haven't been there yet in person, but you could see the videos online. And I would like to say I was at the one and only event there because I love me some UFC. Regardless, picks-wise, I went 7-2 for Saudi Arabia. Love it. We're stacking up those dubs this year. Overall record, 54 episodes in, 335 losses, wins, 165 losses with 6 no contest draws, so on and so forth. So, still I've doubled my losses into wins, 165 times 2. That is less than 335. Holler at your boy. And getting close on the year, I have 142 wins, 79 losses, 3 no contests, and draws. Regardless, let's recap the card overall a little bit. I mean, as we know, there was some short notice matchmaking here, but the prelims started slow. until, in my opinion, the most controversial fight on the card, Renat Fakhretdinov and Nicholas Dalby. Then things just started ramping up. We had the impressive Felipe Lima finish, another controversial fight with Nasrat Haparis and Jared Gordon, but the main card delivered. That's what the UFC wants on ABC. 3 finishes, brilliant performances by Kelvin Gastelum, although there was lots of flack, and Alexander Volkov, and of course, watch out for the Reaper, Bobby Knuckles. I gave it an 8 out of 10 overall for what they had to deal with. Good performance. I enjoyed it. Again, way leaps and bounds, better production and fight outcomes, just quality of fights, excitement, all that stuff compared to what PFL, aka still Bellator, but really all PFL did. So, some good fights we did not break down. We had the road to the UFC Bantamweight Championship. Shang-Ho Lee with a split decision victory over Xiao Long. So he gets a bantamweight contract. Welcome to the UFC, Shang-Ho Lee. We had, obviously, Felipe Pena with a round 2 submission via rear naked choke over Muhammad Naimov, which was a short notice fight, but 50 G's performance of the night for Felipe Pena. And then we had Shara the Bullet Magomedov with a round 3 TKO over Antonio Tricoli. Performance of the night, 50 G's to Shara. One of the more intriguing, new young faces to the UFC. One eye, can't fight everywhere due to having one eye and limit of, having vision issues. But a crazy, wild kickboxer from Russia, I believe even Dagestan, and he is not a grappling heavy fighter. That is why I did not break down this fight. The odds were ridiculous. Antonio Tricoli is supposed to fight a week earlier against Ikram, and then got pushed to this like 3 days before, took this fight, flew in, got to Saudi Arabia an hour before weigh-ins, made the goddamn weight. Hell yeah, Antonio Tricoli showed up. That guy needs to get paid. Dana said they would take care of him, and he grappled Shara. I mean, this guy is a long, lengthy striker, grappling Shara. I didn't think Shara was that impressive. I don't know, he's fun, but I don't think he has future champ written on him by any means. No offense to Antonio Tricoli, but badass moves by him regardless. But let's kick this thing off. In the prelims, we had Muin Gafurov with unanimous decision over Kyung Ho Kong. And as I kind of expected, a lot on the line for both of these fighters, which made this fight go everywhere. It was very high-paced, and Kong was just getting sloppy and worn out as the fight went on, which was funny because in the pre-package before the fight, they talked about him training with the new team and working on his cardio. He definitely had his moments. I mean, Kung is a veteran. Although he has taken some losses and isn't on the best streak right now, he had some really beautiful takedown entries, but he just didn't take advantage of it, finished the takedowns, he got reversed. He was just kind of gassed out by the time, it made sense. And Muin just was a dog. He had to get a win. First UFC victory. Reversed, grappled, outstruck him. Bravo to Mr. Muin. And you look at the stats. He landed 110 total strikes, 47 of which were significant. He did have 1 takedown himself in 3 attempts. A reversal and 6 minutes of 38 seconds of control time, which he is not supposed to be a grappling heavy fighter. That's supposed to be Kyung's department, but he took it to him. And I can't remember where Muin is. I think he was training with Merab Dvalishvili, and that has obviously paid off. Kyung actually landing a little bit higher volume, 119 total strikes, so 9 more than Muin, but only 12 of those were significant. A lot less. He had 3 takedowns, but in 11 attempts. So not great there. Good takedown defense by Gafurov. And he did have 4 minutes and 56 seconds of control time as well. So in a 3-round fight, Muin had more than a round of control time, and Kyung just shy of a round. But Kyung extends his losing streak to 2. He's 2-2 since 2022. And Muin gets his first UFC victory. He is 3-2 since 2022 with his LFA fights. So where do these gents go next? I'd like to see Muan take on Arichi Long, take on another Asian fighter in the UFC, but that would be good skill-wise. And for Kyung, he could fight Christian Quinones. Moving on to the biggest controversy of the night. We had Rinat Fakhretdinov with a split decision victory over Nicholas Dalby, and I did not agree with the decision whatsoever. I was pretty upset about this fight for Nicholas Dalby. He deserved the victory. 40 freaking years old, and took it to a very, very good Rinat. I thought Nicholas won round 2 and 3, which obviously you should win the fight if you win 2 out of 3 rounds. But Rinat, per usual, came out hot, landed a bunch of volume, got a takedown early, and, with all the striking that he had and getting that takedown, which Nicholas was stuffing and defending well, it took out a lot of energy for him in round 1. And he was continually slowing down round by round. But round 2, Nicholas definitely landed more volume, had the bigger significant strikes. He even got 2 takedowns, but didn't do anything with them. Nicholas was able to scoot to the cage, get back up, and then round 3, with everything on the line, one round to Rinat, 1 to Nicholas. I just thought Nicholas landed more volume. Rinat was trying to get those takedowns. He got 2 more in round 3. Had some good control time, but didn't land ground and pound, didn't get submissions, didn't really do anything but lay on Nicholas. Nicholas was able to get back up late in the round, landed a good amount of volume, had a huge knee right up the middle that rocked Rinat, cut open his face, landed some big shots as well. They kind of threw down a very sloppily Max Holloway version at the end of the fight. But if damage is the highest scoring criteria, Nicholas won. If we're talking significant strikes and volume, Nicholas got that in round 3 as well. But they gave the fight to Rinat on 2 of the judges' scorecards. On X, you could see that they keep posting the judges' scorecards about 20 minutes after the fight. One judge, which was on the far right of the image, all night was killing it. Whatever he had, I had. Then there was 2 judges on the other one that just had crazy scoring all night. And, this is going to sound probably pretty harsh, and I could get flack for this. But this is in Saudi Arabia, right? There are a lot of foreign fighters close to them. They were huge ovation for Rinat coming in and a lot of boos to Nicholas Dalby. I'm not saying this is sketchy, but it just seemed kind of sketchy. All the foreign fighters in the controversial fights got the victory. First time UFC in Saudi Arabia. Don't shoot the messenger. Statistically, Nicholas landed 123 total strikes, 66 of them significant. He was 0 for 4 in takedown attempts, but had 3 minutes and 57 seconds of control time up against the cage because he was leaning on Rinat a lot, trying to wear on him as well. They both like to get up in the clinch, but Dalby was winning those exchanges. And then Rinat landed 99 total strikes, so obviously less volume, 68 of those significant, and he had 5 takedowns, but in 11 attempts, so good defense by Dalby. And Rinat had 6 minutes and 17 seconds of control time, so good control time by both of them, but Rinat with more than a round. A lot of that was round 1 and 3. So Rinat extends his winning streak to freaking 21. He did have a draw in there, but he should have won the fight. So he's 4-0 now in the UFC. And Nicholas ends his impressive 4-fight winning streak. He starts a new losing streak. Tough for the damn near 40-year-old veteran who is fighting really, really good late in his career. And he deserved that victory. So what's next? Well, give Rinat Chaos Williams. That's a win-win for them and fight fans, if you ask me. And for Nicholas, with this loss, which I don't think was a loss, he should not get slapped on the wrist for that controversial decision. So I say, how about Gunnar Nelson? I think that would be fantastic for both veterans. But let's go into the prelim headliner, another controversial decision, as Nasrat Haparis had a split decision victory over Jared Gordon. And this was a dog fight, the entire fight. Jared was pushing forward as he usually does, throwing he'd step into it, duck his head, lazy jab. It's not like a clean boxing jab. It was like a lunging jab, but it did work. He was throwing that lazy jab throughout the fight, and Nasrat was just kind of loading up with big hooks throughout the fights and kind of landing combos from outside. So that's why Jared's lazy jab was able to do well. And as you would expect, Jared attempted a ton of takedowns, but Nasrat defended them absolutely fucking brilliantly, man. And to be honest, like if I were to have a reason for Nasrat to win, I don't think this is as controversial as the Dalby fight, but it's because he stuffed all the takedown attempts. I think there was 13. 0 for 13. I mean, golly. So maybe that's what secured him the win on the judges' scorecards. But, I mean, it was a great exchange throughout all 3 rounds. Both men were bloodied up. They were beaten. By round 3, Jared's eye was damn near completely swollen shut. And Nasrat was pretty bloodied up and had a cut on his face. I will give Nasrat round 1 easily. That's no controversy there. He had big shots, a ton of volume and combos, and was just outstriking Jared right off the rip. Jared's changed his game plan in round 2, and he turned it up. You know, Nasrat was slowing down a little bit from all the big shots that he threw in round 1, and Jared was coming forward, landing more volume, piecing up Nasrat's face. Nasrat might have threw a lot of shots, but they didn't land really at all. And then round 3, with all the volume these dudes did and all the takedown attempts by Jared just getting stuffed over and over by Nasrat, they were getting tired out. But Jared kept bringing the fight forward consistently, landing those jabs, and Nasrat's just sitting there, that landing jab, boom! You know, his head's getting whiplash. Like, it's not a clean jab, but it's just stuffed right in his face as he's kind of waiting for those, you know, hands down low, big shots. He's just getting shucked right down the pipe. And Nasrat's combos just started getting sloppy, man. I mean, multiple big shot attempts, but not much landing. And again, not as bad as the Dalby fight, but Jared has just been in through the ringer, man. Absolutely robbed of 2 of his last 4 fights, the Paddy Pimblett and this one. You got to feel for the guy. And again, Nasrat, foreign, I don't know off the top of my head where he's from, but he's close to the area. They're a big fan of him. Don't shoot the messenger. Look at the stats. Nasrat landed 156 total strikes, 146 of them significant. So he was landing big shots, you know, whatever the hell the qualification of a significant strike really is. It could be a quick little hook that barely lands or doesn't land. They might count it. And Jared landed 170 total strikes, so more on the volume, but 5 less significant with 141, 0 for 13 in takedown attempts, although he did had 2 minutes and 49 seconds of control time. Regardless, Nasrat extends his winning streak to 4. He is 4-1 since 2022. And Jared starts a new losing streak. He is now 2-3-1 since 2022. But hey, I picked Nasrat. I wasn't terribly mad about it. I did pick Muin Gafurov, and I did take the underdog, Nicholas Dalby, and that was a highway robbery. So what's next? I think Nasrat and Ludovic Klein would be a freaking fantastic scrap. And for Jared, how about Terrence McKinney? I know Terrence been on a little bit of a skid. I just think it would be great for both fighters, fight fans. Both these guys have a ton on the line. They're usually both game to fight anybody, so let's just book them up. And they're both super active. Which set us up for the ABC main card, and we're breaking down every fight but the Shara Bullet card. Right off rip, Volkan Ozdemir with a brutal, beautiful round 1 knockout over Johnny Walker. Performance of the night, 50 G's to Volkan. And you would think Johnny, at this point in his career, would have like any striking defense, like any at all. But, you know, maybe put your hands up, right? Fight at the range of the length advantage that you have. Use big, powerful kicks like Bilal Muhammad has been doing, or teep kicks like Sean O'Malley. Maybe get a nice, clean jab. Volkan wants to come in, boom, make him think about it, right? He wants to leg kick, boom, make him think about it. But he doesn't do any of those things. He hops around with his hands low, does wild spinning kicks, wild jumping kicks. He gets rocked. He does a flying knee. Can't even see where the flying knee's going, bro. And while his opponent's moving forward and cutting off the octagon, he's just sitting there. He's not circling. He's not moving. He's not, outpointing those guys at range. I figured with this new fight camp and all the shit he's been through and being such a highly thought of prospect, any of these things would be added to his game. I just don't know what goes through Johnny Walker's head, man. Maybe after he won, did the worm separated his shoulder, he separated his brain cells too? I don't know. But Volkan closed range, landed a beautiful kill shot, and this is now Johnny's third complete knockout, not TKO, his third knockout since 2022. Yeah, brutal spot for Mr. Johnny Walker. He only landed 15 total insignificant strikes, and Volkan landed 37 total insignificant. He had 2 knockdowns. So Volkan extends his winning streak to 2. He is 3-1 since 2022. And Johnny extends his losing streak to 2. He is 3-1 since 2022. So what's next? Well, Volkan usually fights once a year, and it has been overseas for a while. So I'm assuming he fights next year. Could be late this year in Abu Dhabi, but I doubt it. Maybe with a quick knockout, but just on his trajectory, it'll be next year. If that's the case, why not Khalil Roundtree Jr. when he comes back from suspension? I mean, that would be an absolute brilliant display of MMA. And for Johnny, I think he needs to take a year off. I think he needs to heal his brain, get some defense in, literally work defense, start coming up with game plans. And then he could fight someone maybe like Dominic Reyes or Dustin Jacoby. But he needs to pump the brakes a little bit and focus on himself. Moving on, and that was one of the fights I got wrong, surprisingly. I picked Johnny Walker. I did pick Kelvin Gastelum here. Lots of drama for Mr. Kelvin, but he got the unanimous decision victory over Daniel Rodriguez. A little Mexico on Mexico crime. But I think it was Wednesday of fight week. Kelvin already copped out of making weight, which he has moved from middleweight, which is 185, to welterweight, which is 170, one of the bigger weight gaps in weight classes. And not like, hey, can we do a catch weight? Could I do, 175, 180? D-Rod said on something, social or video he recorded, that he agreed to a 180-pound catch weight, but Kelvin was like, nah, I can't do that. So he did 185, 15 pounds different on Wednesday. Like, what are you doing? What, like, I don't know. It's just, there's so many questions here. I could get into it, but it's just like, Jesus, dude. And everyone is just roasting him because he has a YouTube video rating tacos, which is understandable, but it shows, in quotes, missing weight 2 months before this. So it's like, were you planning on missing weight? Do you not give a shit anymore? Is this just a mind game thing? Like, what in the hell is going on? But this is getting out of control. Kelvin pulling out a few times, not making weight. It's tarnishing his career, and Dana White did not hold back in the post-fight interview, ripping him up. So we'll see if he even lets him fight at welterweight, which I think if Kelvin wants to win in his prime, that's his best bet. But you got to feel for D-Rod, man. I mean, after the fight, Biz being asked about the weight cut, and Kelvin apologized to the fans and the UFC brass, but not to Daniel Rodriguez. That's the guy he should first be apologizing to. D-Rod at Wednesday was ready to cut weight, probably way lower than he wanted to be. Then it's a 15-pound difference, so he's got to put weight back on. It's just a big disadvantage. And with that being said, Kelvin did, though, put on an awesome performance. He showed that although he didn't make weight, he had the cardio to get the job done. He fought like vintage Kelvin, pushing the pace, bringing it in, bringing volume, getting grappling mixed in there to get the job done. And, Daniel, he did a great job. He looked to be in pretty damn good shape from what I've seen of the past few years. He landed plenty of nice shots, nice clean boxing. It just wasn't enough as Kelvin was on him the entire fight, grappling, striking, big combos. So he lost via decision. But statistically, Kelvin landed 123 total, 112 of them significant. He had 4 takedowns, was 4 for 4, and 2 minutes and 47 seconds of control time. And Daniel was right there, though. He landed 132 total strikes, 127 of them significant. So Kelvin starts a new winning streak. He is 2-1 since 2022. And Daniel extends his losing streak to 3. He is 1-3 since 2022. So what's next? Well, I'm assuming Kelvin will get one more chance with the weight cut to welterweight. And if that's the case, I think a matchup with Neil Magny would be great. And for D-Rod, he could square up with a veteran Max Griffin. What set us up for the co-main, the big dogs, we had the Russian square-off, Alexander Volkov. Actually, this was the fight I got wrong. I just couldn't believe it. With a unanimous decision over Sergey Pavlovich. And what a mixed bag this fight was, man. Volkov had been interviewed many times about Sergey, before they were booked together. And he talked about how hard Sergey hits. He's been knocking everyone out in the first round. He's talked about how sparring was over the years. He forgot. He just gets rocked. But the whole time, he was giving props to the fellow Russian and then just made absolute slight work of him. Probably one of the scariest dudes in the entire UFC roster and of all time. And he just picked him apart, man. Every time Sergey tried to enter, which he has nice long arms, but he doesn't do jabs and comes in close. It's big overhands and big shots to try to shut the lights off. He was clearly looking for knockout shots. I'm sure over the years of sparring with Volkov, he's landed those shots, so that's what he was trying to do. But every time he tried to enter in, Volkov teep kick, nice up kicks, jab, jab, circle, circle. He kept moving, and he kept him at kickboxing distance, which is always going to work in Volkov's favor. So after Sergey's nose is completely busted up, I figured he would, by round 2, all right, dude, I absolutely lost round 1. I'm on my way to lose round 2. He's a good grappler. Volkov isn't. Maybe go for some takedowns. But he just kept trying for those big overhands, trying to close distance, get the knockout shot. And of course, he did land some big shots. You could see it rock Volkov pretty good. But Volkov was able to just stay out of range. He's circling, moving. You land one as you're moving back. It's not the same if you're in, right? Maybe more of a knockout shot. Everyone's talked about these new UFC gloves that are lighter, less padding. I figured that would be striker heavy. Favoriting the strikers with less weight, faster, more power. But a lot of people have talked about how it could favor grapplers. It's not as clunky, better for takedowns, getting control with your hands. And I had tweeted or X'd or whatever the hell we call it, that if Sergey goes to a decision, this is probably showing you that the gloves aren't there. But Volkan Ozdemir with a nice knockout. We had what else? I guess those were all decisions. Shara Magomedov had a TKO. So, it's still up for debate, I thought. Maybe the Robert Whittaker knockout closed the gap there, but seeing Sergey land big shots and not just clean knock out somebody as I expected, maybe the verdict's out still for the gloves. So let's see what happens in the 303 main event with Yuri and Alex. If that goes decision, maybe that's for sure. The gloves might be paying in there. But regardless, Volkov, just great job, keeping moving, not letting Sergey lock in his target, moving his head to avoid real danger, and just kickboxing the shit out of him, keeping him at range. Teep kick after teep kick, leg kick, nice jab, nice jab, nice jab combo, jab, nice right following in. Beautiful display, vintage Volkov, and man, Volkov is still just an absolute problem. Statistically, Sergey landed 46 total insignificant strikes. He was actually 0 for 1 in takedowns, but it was late in round 3. It was terrible. Literally a minute left after he's down 3 rounds. And then Volkov landed 83 total insignificant strikes. So Volkov extends his winning streak to 4. He is 4-1. His only loss being against Tom Aspinall. And Sergey extends his losing streak to 2. He is 4-2 since 2022. So maybe not everyone agrees with me here. I'm sure Cyril Gahn doesn't. But Volkov has been there, done that. He's been fighting in the UFC since 2016 at the top level, the best competition heavyweight has to offer since 2018. That's 6 years of just fighting the gauntlet. And with this brilliant performance, Sergey Pavlovich is an absolute problem. That's what I'm talking about. He is a problem. And Volkov just cleaned house. So, because of that, Volkov deserves to fight up. I think the fight that makes sense after that is the Cyril Gahn rematch. Cyril Gahn out kickbox Volkov, but Cyril hasn't been super active. He's been up and down. Why not make it happen? He could rematch other people. I just think that's the fight to make with where the rankings sit. And if that's not possible, They'll probably throw him Jailton Almeida. I don't think that's right by Volkov, in my opinion, after that dominant performance. For Sergey, I think with a couple losses, let's let him fight Jailton Almeida. Let's see what happens there. So I'm going to go Jailton and Sergey Suralgan Volkov rematch. Then we had the main event. Y'all must have forgot, man. We had Robert Whittaker with a round 1 knockout over Ikram Aliskerov. Performance of the night, 50 G's to Bobby Knuckles. And it wasn't without adversity. You know, the main event got canceled. He was prepping for the very good Khamzat Chimaev. So he had to deal with opponent changes literally a week out because Ikram was supposed to fight the week prior. And then there was an announcement on the MMA Hour that he had a nasty mouth surgery a week before. And he said the pain scale for the week was a 9.5 out of 10. He couldn't train, couldn't sleep. So in fight camp, he was dealing with adversity as well. But fight day, Bobby just had an aura around him. There was a video of him in the bus with the head down looking like a stone cold killer. One of the best walkouts in the UFC time after time. Him mean-mugged coming out to Roy Jones Jr. can't be touched. I mean, he was coming out for blood. And boy, did he look like vintage Bobby Knuckles. Absolutely took Ikram's soul out of his body with that uppercut. And for Ikram, you know, he had to deal with a lot of change as well and adversity. He was going to fight Antonio Tricoli a week before, and we saw what Tricoli looked like. Now he's fighting freaking Robert Whittaker, which is light years up in competition. I mean, there is levels to this game. But boy, Robert's timing, the memory of what Ikram was doing and how he was setting up with feints was beautiful. He kept coming in with that right over, and he kept lifting that leg. So when he went for it, he lifted that leg. Obviously, wide open shot. Boom. Then came in with the uppercut. Brilliant. And Khamzat also finished Ikram via uppercut when they fought in Brave. And obviously, Robert probably watched that film, saw the opening. Bobby Knuckles. Now, statistically, Robert landed 14 total and significant strikes with a knockdown. And then Ikram only landed 5 total and significant fights. So, Robert Whittaker, only 33 years old, talked about fighting, sadly, not at 305 in Perth, but maybe late in the year. He is now on a 2-fight winning streak, and he is 3-2 since 2022, losing to the current champ DDP and former champ Israel Adesanya. And then Ikram Aliskerov now ends his 7-fight winning streak, starts a new losing streak. He is now 3-1 in the UFC. Robert said already he does not like the idea of this, sadly, but I'm all for it. I think it's got to be Robert Whittaker, Sean Strickland. Sean says he wants to wait for a title fight. Robert said he would be the backup fighter for the main event, Israel and DDP. Now he's saying he doesn't want to be a backup fighter. Sometimes these guys have choices, but sometimes you get thrown in the fire. We already have the title shot. Are you guys going to wait until early next year to get the fight? No, let's match you guys up against each other because you both have cleaned out the division. You haven't faced each other. Why the frick not? That's what I'm saying. Why not? This just makes too much gosh darn sense. So I'm just going to go with that. UFC never updated their rankings. Let's see if they did yet this week. UFC website is such freaking trash. I would assume, Volkov's going to take number 3 and Sergey's going to swap with him in the rankings. But yeah, I'm not too sure what ranking wise if Robert's going to move or not. He probably won't. He'll stay at number 3. But I'm going to say Robert Whittaker, Sean Strickland. That's got to be the fight to make next, unless they both just want to sit a bunch of time, which I'm not a big fan of that. And then for Ikram, let's book him up against how about Edmund Shabazian, the young guy coming off a nice TKO victory himself. I think stylistically and skill-wise, that's the next fight to make. But that sets us up for UFC 303 this weekend. Woo-wee! International Fight Week, usually in July, but now it's at the end of June. And obviously, no more Conor McGregor. But what the UFC has done to put this card together, I'm giving them props. I'm hyped up. Already bought the pay-per-view. But early prelims, 3 p.m. Pacific on ESPN Plus or Fight Pass. Then we have the prelims, 5 p.m. Pacific on ESPN. If I am to preview this card before we break down the fights, it's been a roller coaster, an absolute roller coaster. Because Conor McGregor pulled out, they got the new main event, Alex Pereira, Yuri Prochazka. I said last year that's a Fight of the Year candidate. It didn't quite come out that way. But then they added Brian Ortega, Diego Lopez. Absolute banger. I do think this card has good depth, great matchmaking. Obviously, it's missing the Conor McGregor aura that can't be matched right now. But for the main event, it's as good of a replacement as you can get on short notice. I think that because UFC 299 and 300 came, the Sphere's coming up, it has taken away, like everyone expects just absolutely stacked cards, but in normal UFC, this is stacked, and I expect it to put on one hell of a show. 2 title fights are normal for International Fight Week. I would say that's probably what's missing, but a stacked 10 fights, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10, but I think it could over-deliver. But with all the short notice, I think like the co-main and the main event are the big dog fights, but both of them are on short notice. For me, what I've seen from short notice, it's not quite the same, and there's usually a quick finish. They just kind of go for it. If you like early finishes, it's for you. I like to have like 3 to 4, they're 5 rounders. Like I want to see some more action. So I'm going to go 6 out of 10. But a good fight we will not break down. We have the 22-year-old road to the UFC winner, Ray Cerulla, taking on Carlos Hernandez. Only 22, road to the UFC winner. A lot of young Asian blood coming in, taking names. But let's break it down. We got the early prelims. We got Ricky Simone, 31 years old with a 20-5 record, taking on Vinicius Lockdog Oliveira, 28 years old with a 20-3 record. And what's even more crazy is that this is the very first fight. I think this is a very fun matchup. Both of these men definitely in way different positions in their UFC career, but we have a fantastic opening fight to the evening. When I've been to Vegas, Vegas never shows up early. It's going to be crickets in there for this fight, most likely. But hey, Ricky's been in the UFC since 2018. He's been fighting the top 15 studs in the division pretty much for his entire career. And he's just now getting to the beginning of his prime. Vinicius is nearing his prime, but he has only had 1 UFC fight and the Contender Series fight under his belt. But he does have a lot of pro experience. But if you're paying money for these tickets, I know they're not cheap because Conor was on it. I doubt they got discounted. Let's actually look at the fight costs real quick. I love to do this to see what prices are. And if you were to buy, did you get a good deal? Did you not get a good deal? So tonight they have the Hall of Fame introduction ceremony I didn't know about. That's happening tonight. There's tickets for that. So we're talking, I like to get in the 100 level up to the top because it's a good enough seat. You get to see over the cage. To get the seats I like, you're talking $721 to $1,000. And the upper decker nosebleeds, we're talking $582. Cheapest seat that I'm seeing, $465, $415, which is a terrible seat. And this is on Game Time, actually $383, which includes fees. But still a pretty penny to get in there. And if you're paying that kind of money, show up for the goddamn prelims. These guys deserve it. Regardless, let's break it down. Now, Ricky has a black belt in BJJ. He's an LFA alum and former champion. He had 1 successful title defense with LFA. And he is also a Contender Series King of the Cage and Titan FC alum. He's been doing it. He is on a 2-fight losing streak and is only 1-2 since 2022. Now, Vinicius, also a Contender Series alum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, 2-0 in the UFC, 16 of his 20 wins via knockout. All 3 of his losses via knockout. So to knock out or be knocked out. Now this fight really is a clash of styles showdown. Ricky is a grappling heavy fighter, and Vinicius is a kind of wild, unorthodox striker. Not quite as crazy as Yuri, but he is coming from all over the place, doing wild things, flying knees, possesses a ton of power in his hands. But I'm going to assume Ricky is going to give a heavy dose of leg kicks, has a big wide stance, give him some calf kicks, jab him up to close range and look for takedowns. You know, put combos in to push him up against the back, boom, go for a double, maybe go to single, right him, get those takedowns. So, I think Vinicius, though, he's going to be aggressive. He's going to be in front of fans, coming from the Contender Series. I think he comes out blazing hot and early. Could he get a finish? Absolutely. But the longer this fight goes, I do believe it's going to favor Ricky more. He's got cardio for days, it's proven, and he will pull Oliveira into deep waters and try to drown the young blood. For that reason, I'm taking the veteran. I'm taking Ricky Simone. We putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Andre the Pitbull Orlovsky. He is 45 freaking years old with a massive 34 wins and 23 loss record. He has taken on Martin Badis Boudet, 32 years old with a 13-2 record. Now, Andre is still getting it at 45 years young. Although he's on a 3-fight losing streak, I assume he's going to go out with a good performance. I think he's trying to go out on top, if you ask me. But 45 years old. I am just about to turn 32 in a couple weeks. Happy early birthday to me. I couldn't imagine taking a punch or a knee or an elbow right now. Never have, don't wanna. Imagine 13 more years. That is freaking insane. Anyways, Martin is coming off a loss. He's in the middle of his prime at 32. So, he's going to be hungry as well. But this is not going to be an easy feat because you're fighting a 45-year-old dog. And when we talk about the Pitbull, he is a dog. Ho, ho. Now, Andre trains out of ATT. Little career resurgence since doing that. He's an international master of sport in Sambo. He's the former UFC heavyweight champion. He had one successful title defense. He was also an interim heavyweight champion with the title defense. He's been there. He is the first Belarusian champion in UFC history. He has the most wins in UFC heavyweight history with 23 of them things. The most bouts in UFC heavyweight history, 41. Imagine fighting heavyweight where everyone's knocking each other out. 41. I mean, CTE, huh? The most total fight time in UFC heavyweight history, 6 hours, 34 minutes, and 58 seconds. But he goes to decision a lot of decision wins. The most in UFC heavyweight history with 12. The most decision bouts in UFC heavyweight history with 18. He also has had the most significant strikes landed in UFC heavyweight history, 1,453. And the most strikes landed in UFC heavyweight history, 1,751. He might be keeping these for quite some time. He has the most strikes he was the 25-15 comeback fighter of the year. He is an M1 Elite XC Affliction. I mean, that's how you know you're OG. The names Elite XC and Affliction, man, were those the days. Strike Force, 1FC, World Series of Fighting, and he's had 2 stunts with the UFC. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, but is 2-3 since 2022. 17 of his 34 wins are via knockout. 12 of his 23 losses are via knockout, about half each. So, in the life of heavyweight, to knock out or be knocked out. Now, Martin is a Contender Series alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak, but is 4-1 since 2022. And 7 of his 13 wins are via knockout. I do think Martin should realistically win. The dude is 13 years younger. He could grapple decently as well, which has, definitely been something that Andre's had to deal with. He should have the better gas tank. He should have more power at this moment in his career. But besides a Kimura submission, he hasn't finished a fight since his Contender Series TKO. So, I do think Andre really wants this. I think he's going to go all in. I think he gets a win. He gets a retirement fight. So I'm thinking he's going to take some risks and just go for it. This will probably end up being a decision bout, though. So he's going to need to bring the entire well. He's going to have to bring some dirty boxing, some grappling, some BJJ, as well as kickboxing. I'm really interested to see. I think you lose, you're on a 4-fight skid, you might retire. You win, you go out on top. Win-win for Andre. For that reason, I'm taking the underdog. I'm taking the pit bull. No parlays there. Moving on, still in the early prelims. Again, pretty deep card. We got Jillian the Savage Robertson. 29 years old with a 13-8 record and the number 15 next to her name. Taking on Michelle the Karate Hottie Watterson Gomez. 38 years old with an 18-12 record and the number 14 to her name. Little 14-15 action. Now, another fun fight here. Two women who are also in different stages in their careers. As Jillian is in her prime, she is literally the best version of herself right now. While Michelle is on a big skid, I think she's kind of trying to find her way back and find herself in the UFC again at 38 years old. But breaking it down, Jillian has a BJJ and kickboxing style. She trains out of the Goat Shed, Dean Thomas. She's got a black belt in BJJ. She's an Ultimate Fighter alum. And 2 of her last 3 fights have been performance of the night. She's showing up. She's showing out. She has the most finishes in UFC women's flyweight division history with 7. The most submission wins in UFC women's history was 7. The most submission wins in UFC women's flyweight division history as well was 6. And she has the highest top position percentage in UFC women's flyweight division history at 41.9%. 9 of her 13 wins are via submission. Now Michelle, she trains out of Jackson Wink MMA. She has a black belt in freestyle karate. She has a brown belt in BJJ. She was the 2013 Fight of the Year, had the 2013 Fight of the Year against Jessica Penne, and the 2014 Fight of the Year against Harika Tabercio, which was an Invicta. She was the 2013 and 14 Invicta Atomweight of the Year. She's an Invicta alum and former champion. She had 1 successful title defense there. She is also a King of the Cage, Ring of Fighting, and Strikeforce alum. 9 of her 18 wins are via submission, and 4 of her losses, 12 losses, are also via submission. So to submit or be submitted. Now she's on a 4-fight losing streak, and she has only won twice since 2019. Brutal for Michelle. She's a quality fighter still. And again, Michelle, high-level fighter. She's going to make Jillian go to work. She's not just going to, be finished easily, taken down, grappled, submitted. It's not going to work like that. Michelle has fought super high-level competition of late, but her entire UFC career. And although she's 38, her confidence might be shot. I don't think a wrestling and grappling heavy fighter is going to benefit her in a matchup. That's kind of her weakness. But I do think she's going to fire away a ton of volume as she normally does. A lot of those beautiful kicks. She can kick straight up. It's insane. She has nice combos. She's got a good team to come up with a game plan. But she doesn't have a ton of power. And she's usually overpowered. I think Robertson's going to bring the fight to Michelle. Probably bully her a little bit. Push her up against the cage. Bring the fight where she wants. Get some takedowns. Hold her down early. Tire her out. To then let her hands loose, take chances, maybe get a submission. For that reason, I'm taking Jillian Robertson. We are putting her on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. Into the prelims, we have this young phenom, Peyton Talbot, 25 years old with an undefeated 8-0 record, taking on Giannis the Desert Warrior Gamori. 29 years old with a 12-2 record. This really is an opportunity for the UFC to showcase Peyton, his first fight in front of UFC fans. Brilliant young 25-year-old Talbot. And the odds are showing that. Giannis is 29. He's only one UFC fight in his pro career. And I think at one point the odds were at minus 2,000. They might be around minus 1,600 now. But breaking it down, Peyton is an A1, which is Uriah Faber's promotion, and a Contender Series alum. He's undefeated on an 8-fight winning streak, 3-0 in the UFC, and 6 of his 8 wins are via knockout. Now, Giannis is a Brave alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak, obviously 0-1 in the UFC, and 4 of his 12 wins are via submission. Now, Peyton is one of the more hyped young fighters, and his last fight absolutely showed why. He completely destroyed another up-and-coming fighter, Cameron Simon. And I do think Peyton is going to pick Giannis apart with his striking. If he needs to mix in grappling, he can do that. He even clowned Giannis on his YouTube, which is pretty wild YouTube. It reminds me of old skate stuff. This guy's just got a different dynamic. But he told Giannis on a chalkboard how to beat him because he wants him to fight him his best. I don't know what that's about, head games or what's going on. But again, his first fight in front of a UFC crowd. Let's see how he performs there. One of the biggest odd favorites in UFC history. I think it's at minus 1,600 now. Shit is insane. But I will take Peyton Talbot. Not putting him on parlays because those odds are ridiculous. Moving on, we have Charles Air Jourdain. 28 years old with a 15-7-1 record. And taking on Gene Lord Assassin Silva. 27 years old with a 12-2 record. I do think this will be a fantastic fight. Gene has 3 round 1 finishes since 2023, and Charles has been absolutely showing out in the UFC since 2021 with what he can do in this striking department. Now, Gene is undefeated in the UFC. Charles looking to rebound after a very, very close split decision loss. But breaking it down, Charles has a black belt in BJJ. He's a TKO alum. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 3-3 since 2022. 8 of his 15 wins are via knockout, 5 via submission. So 13 of his 15 wins come via finish. He gets her done. And he's also got a 2.5-inch leg reach advantage. He does like to throw those kicks. Now, Gene trains out of Fighting Nerds. He's an RFA and Contender Series alum. He's on a 9-fight winning streak, 2-0 in the UFC, and 9 of his 12 wins are via knockout. This should absolutely be a high-paced and heavy-action striking battle. I think it's going to deliver, and I think it's really going to pick up the intensity, the momentum in the prelims. Hopefully we get a brilliant Talbot performance, because Gene has true knock-you-the-F-out power. He has good grappling. I just don't think he's going to be able to outpoint Charles. The level of competition Charles is used to in the UFC, I think, will really help him out here. I think he stays at range, picks him apart. For that reason, I'm taking Air Jourdain. We are putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Moving on. We have Killer Cub Swanson. 40 years old with a 29-13 record. Taking on Andre Touchy Feely. 34 years old with a 23-11 record. Now, this is a fantastic matchmaking job right here. Bravo to the UFC brass. Although Cub is nearing 41 years old, I do believe he has confidence. He's looking good. His last fight was brilliant in his return to featherweight. He had a brief stint at bantamweight. Didn't work out for him. Back to featherweight. I'm sure that bantamweight cut was brutal. But he's fought very high-level competition recently. And Andre in his last fight got brutally knocked out by my guy, Dan Ige. It's not easy to come back from knockouts, let alone in less than 5 months. That's what Andre's doing. Andre should have the speed advantage, should be quicker, cleaner with his striking at this point in his career. He's in the second half of his prime, so the time is now for him. He cannot lose to a 40-year-old Cub Swanson. Breaking it down, Cub has a black belt in BJJ. He has the most post-fight bonuses in UFC/WEC featherweight division history with 13 of them things. Always love me some Cub Swanson. He had the 2016 Fight of the Year against Doo Ho Choi which was a UFC Hall of Fame fight. He's a King of the Cage and WEC alum. He's on a one-fight winning streak. He's only 1-1 since 2022, but he fought at bantamweight, now back at featherweight. He has 13 of his 29 wins via knockout, 7 of his 13 losses by knockout. With a name like Killer, it's to knock out or to be knocked out. Now, Andre trains out of Team Alpha Male. He's tied with Hakeem Dawodu for most split decision wins in UFC featherweight history with 3. He's a Cage Fury and King of the Cage alum. He's on a one-fight losing streak and is 2-3 since 2022. And 10 of his 23 wins are via knockout. He has a little bit of length here. He has a 4-inch reach advantage. Again, Andre has so much on the line. If you lose to a 40-year-old cub, then he's probably not fighting the top 20 of the division anytime soon. And his chance to move up while he's still in his prime, the best part of his career, it's not going to look good for him. And Cub at this point could retire anytime. You know, you get a win, maybe you keep going if you look good. You get a loss, maybe it's time to retire. But I do think that Cub, you know, he's looked good. I don't think he's close to being done yet. And I do think if the fight goes to decision, I just don't see Cub being able to push forward and overpower Andre. I do think, you know, this would be his best bet to get a finish because Andre's just coming off a knockout finish. He's probably going to have some confidence, issues a little bit. But I do think Andre is going to move a lot. He's going to keep Cub at range throughout this fight. Be measured, be smart. You got to keep, locked in for the entire 15 minutes. I think it's just going to try to pick Cub apart while trying to avoid that damage. I've been back and forth here with who I pick, but for that reason, I think I'm going to go with Andre Fili, but I am not putting this on a parlay at all. I do think Cub has the chance. I think it would be brilliant to see here, but I think Andre Fili has too much on the line. He's going to fight smart, and he's too technical, and he is skilled. For that reason, again, I'm taking Andre Fili. Now, in the prelim main eventer, we got your boy Joe Body Bags Pfeiffer. Be like Joe. 27 years old with a 12-3 record, taking on Marc-Andre Power Bar Burial. 34 years old with a 16-7 record. Again, another very fun and great matchup. Good job to the UFC brass giving us this type of card. Now, Joe has been on a tear since until February. Jack Hermanson got out of the first round and absolutely put it to Joe Pfeiffer in a 5-round main event. Joe's first time doing that. Some learning lessons to be had there. Thank goodness for Joe, this is not a 5-rounder, but he is taking on a guy named Power Bar for a reason. The deeper this fight goes, that's where Power Bar loves to live. That can be dangerous for the young Joe Pfeiffer, who is still just scratching the surface of his potential at 27 years old. But breaking it down, Joe trains out of Marquez MMA. 2 of his 4 UFC fights have been performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. He's a Ring of Combat alum and former champion. He's a Cage Fury alum, and he's been a Contender Series 2-time alum. 8 of his 12 wins via knockout. He's on a 1-fight losing streak and is 4-1 since 2022. And Mark trains out of Killcliff FC with a bunch of studs. He has only a blue belt in BJJ. He's a TKO alum and former champion with 1 successful title defense. 10 of his 16 wins are via knockout. And he's on a 1-fight losing streak, but is 3-3 since 2022. I do think Mark is the best version of himself in his prime at 34 years old. And a win over Joe would really boost his stock. Although every time he fights up in the rankings, it just hasn't fared well for Mark. And Joe, obviously, hugely aggressive. I'm sure he knows he needs to be more measured throughout this fight. I do think he's going to show up and show out. I am taking Joe Pfeiffer, but I'm avoiding this on a parlay. I could see him dominating round 1, doing a little too much, and then Mark taking rounds 2 and 3. That's why you got to tune in to find out. But let's kick it off in the main card. We have Ian, the future Machado Gary. I hate this two-name shit, man. Ugh. Ian Machado Gary. Like, come on, bruh. 26 years old, undefeated with a 14-0 record and the number 7 next to his name. Taking on Bellator's Michael Venom Page. 37 years old with a 22-2 record and the number 14 next to his name. This is actually a very fun stylistic matchup. We have two long strikers who like to stay at range, and for MVP, it's just a ton on the line for him. Second UFC fight, if he wants to move up and make a name for himself and prove that he belongs, you got to get a win here. Breaking it down, and I got the chance to see him in Miami against Kevin Holland, and weird fight, but he got the job done. Now, Ian trains out of Shoot Box Diego Lima. He's been living in Brazil for quite some time now. I believe his wifey's from there. He has a black belt in judo. He's a Cage Warriors alum and former champion. He's undefeated 7-0 in the UFC, and 7 of his 14 wins are via knockout. Now, Michael has a kickboxing style. He's got a black belt in Kung Fu. He won gold at the 2007 Waco World Kickboxing Champions and in 2009 at the WKA Worlds. But these are semi-contact. It's like some karate shit. Speaking of karate, in 1998, he had the U.S. Open ISKA Semi-Contact Karate Championships. He had the 2016 Knockout of the Year against Evangelista Santos in Bellator. Obviously, he's a Bellator alum. He has the most stoppage victories in Bellator welterweight division history with 10. The most knockout victories in Bellator welterweight division history with 9. He's tried with Patricky Pitbull for most knockout victories in Bellator history at 11. He's on a 2-fight winning streak, 1-0 in the UFC. He is 2-1 since 2022. He had a brutal beatdown in BKFC. 13 of his 22 wins are via knockout, and he does sport a 4.5-inch reach advantage. Now, MVP did impress me in person versus Kevin Holland. The walkout, the aura, the way he presents himself, I'm starting to like him more and more. I just don't believe he's going to be able to frustrate Ian like he did Kevin. Ian is much more of a technical striker. Ian also likes to stay at range, but I believe he's a lot more dangerous when they close range in the pocket, and I think Ian's going to make that happen. I'm really not too sure how MVP is going to be able to bounce around, keep his hands down, and keep Ian away, let alone find enough volume of strikes to land to win the rounds. Unless Ian does it too. It's like the Yoel Romero-Israel Adesanya fight. They both stay at range, just tit for tat. That's possible. I'm not betting on that. Ian's talking a big game. You better back it up. I am taking Ian Gary, but avoiding this on a parlay where possible. Moving on, we got a women's showdown on the main card. We have Mayra Shitara Bueno Silva, 32 years old with a 10-3-1 record and the number 3 next to her name, taking on Macy Chiasson, 32 years old with a 10-3 record and the number 7 next to her name. We got two women in their primes, and they're getting the main card fighting slot. So let's see if they can perform in front of that crazy crowd. There's going to be a lot on the line for these ladies. Macy's fighting the best of her career as a grappling heavy fighter. She has not been super active, though. And Mayra just fought for the title. She got exposed, but she's been active for the past 4 years. She's defeated Holly Holm, Lena Landsberg, and Stephanie Ager. That's quite the list. Now, Mayra is an aggressive striker with good BJJ, so it'll be interesting to see how she does with more of a wrestling heavy grappler in Macy. Now, Mayra trains out of ATT. She has a brown belt in BJJ. 2 of her last 3 fights have been performance of the night. She's showing up. She's showing out. She's on a 1-fight losing streak. She is 3-1-1. She really should be 4-1. She beat Holly Holm, but it was overturned due to her cheating with Ritalinic acid. And 7 of her 10 wins are via submission. Now, Macy has a brown belt in BJJ. She also has a brown belt in Krav Maga, which is like some defense thing in another country. She's an Ultimate Fighter alum, and she was the Ultimate Fighter champ. Also an Invicta alum. She has fought a lot at 145, which doesn't exist in UFC anymore for women. She's had a lot of 140 catchweight bouts. Reason I bring this up, she made weight at bantamweight in her last fight, but could be something to keep an eye on. She is on a 1-fight winning streak and is 2-1 since 2022. And she is sporting a 5.5-inch reach advantage and a 3-inch leg reach advantage. I'm expecting Macy to move forward, try to push Myra to her limits and wear her out. That's exactly what Raquel Pennington did, and it worked out well. She's had a half a year to try and change the course with her cardio because Myra really got exposed. I think by round 2, she was completely gassed and just somehow made it throughout the fight. But I do think the later the fight goes on, the more it favors Macy regardless. I do think Myra has better striking, and once taken down, she'll have those submission threats. I just don't think she's going to be able to avoid the top control from Macy, so she's going to have to stuff the takedowns to find a way. I've gone back and forth on this so many times, but I am going with the favorite. I'm taking Myra Silva. I think she's got more ways to victory. Macy could get takedowns and hold her, but that doesn't always win rounds. I am not putting this on any parlays whatsoever. And we still have 3 more in the main card. Really short notice bout here. We have Anthony Lionheart Smith, 35 years old with a 38-19 record and the number 10 next to his name, taking on Roman the Caucasian Dolidze, 35 years old with a 12-3 record. Now, this spot on the main card was probably the most chaotic. Anthony had actually been the short notice fighter. He agreed to fight Carlos Olberg, who is a problem after Jamal Hill pulled out. And, he just took on Vitor Petrino, another prospect. So Anthony's out there proving himself. But then Olberg pulled out. So insert probably a week's notice. Roman Dolidze, who's fighting up. He has fought at light heavyweight before, but usually fights at middleweight. Now, we'll talk about this in the main event as well. But short notice fights are just usually quick finishes. The fighter who has more preparation usually comes out on top. I'm thinking a lot like Islam Volkanovski. But Anthony's coming off the best win in his career since 2019. And I don't think he could really afford a loss here unless he wants to be a fight analyst for ESPN sooner than later. And I say that kindly. I love Anthony Smith. I've always enjoyed him as a fighter. I got to chat with him for 45 minutes at Nobu in Miami. Just super down-to-earth guy. Would love to get a podcast connection with him later. But yeah, you can't lose to Roman on short notice like this when he's moving up divisions. But although Roman is moving up, he has previously fought at light heavyweight, like I've said, and he's just a big dude. It shouldn't be a huge benefit for Anthony, and Roman Dolidze is still strong, usually stronger than his opponents no matter what weight class. Now, Anthony trains out of Factory X. He's got a black belt in BJJ. He's a Cage Fury, Strikeforce, RFA, and Bellator alum. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He's 2-3 since 2022. 20 of his 38 wins are via knockout, 15 via submission. People forget he's got 35 of his 38 wins via submission, but 11 of his 19 losses are via knockout. And he is sporting a 3-inch leg reach advantage. He does like to kick. Now, Roman is an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Extreme Couture MMA. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. He is 3-2 since 2022. 3 of his last 5 fights have been performance of the night. He's showing up. He's showing out. The guy is aggressive. He has 7 of his 12 wins come via knockout. Now, although Roman is moving up, again, he is a good grappler, but he's just strong. He could throw guys around. I think Anthony has just as good jiu-jitsu, but he's more of a finesse grappler. He's very technique-driven. Now, Anthony had actually been working with Eric Nixick, who is the head coach at Extreme Couture recently. He'd been training, getting pointers, and that's the coach for Roman, who is getting a week's notice. So I am very intrigued to see, what the game plan's like for Anthony, and what the game plan is going to be for Roman to attack Anthony. They may try some different things, but I do expect Anthony to be moving, try to stay at range, use a lot of kicks, chop Roman's lower leg, take out some of that power. Because Roman doesn't jab and have a lot of straights. It's a lot of leading hooks and just big, powerful shots. But, Roman's going to try to close that distance and fire away a knockout shot in the hope of finishing Anthony. It could be done. I do think this fight stays on the feet majority of the fight, but someone has a big advantage. Maybe someone will look to get the other opponent up against the cage. They both like clinch work and dirty boxing, so it could be interesting to see how that plays out. Much like the, what was it? A fight on Saudi Arabia. Two guys clinched and ended up being there quite a bit. The Renat and Nicholas Dalby fight. I think that Anthony's just going to be quicker. He's going to be more technical. He has a ton of confidence. He knows what's on the line. He was training for an absolute killer in Carlos Ulberg. For that reason, I'm taking Anthony Smith as the underdog, and he's coming to eat. Ho, ho. I'm actually putting him on that parlay. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. What a show! Speaking of show, these two fights, Hallaberry, hallelujah. We got Brian T-City Ortega, 16-3 with the number 3 next to his name, taking on Diego Lopez, 29 years old with a 24-6 record and the number 4 next to his name. I'm looking at the odds here to see what's up a little bit, see if there's been any movement. But boy, are we in for some treats here in the co-main and main event. Right now, Anthony Smith, by the way, plus 125. This fight was literally booked like 2 weeks ago. So both of these fighters really have had to just get right into it. Brian is fighting better than ever. The Yair Rodriguez fight was brilliant. I think he's kind of riding high after a lot of adversity there, rolled his ankle, all the personal life stuff. I just think he's in a good place right now, which is huge as a fighter. He's happier. His personal life's under control. And, the 29-year-old Diego, Brian Ortega's 33, by the way. I missed that. Pretty positive he's 33. I'm just going to go with it. Diego's not even quite in his prime yet. He doesn't have a ton of UFC fights. He did show his potential a year ago when he did really good against Movsar Evloev, and he's really blown away the UFC. The performance at UFC 300 has his stock skyrocketing, and he is somehow the favorite in this fight after putting Sadiq Yusuf's lights off. I did pick against Diego against Sadiq as well. But breaking it down, Brian has a first-degree black belt in BJJ. 6 of his last 8 fights have been fight of the night or performance of the night. T-City shows up, he absolutely shows out. And he's taken on an absolute killer on 2 weeks' notice. He was the 2017 Breakthrough Fighter of the Year. He had the 2021 Fight of the Year against Alexander Volkanovski. He had that guillotine in, Gilly Gang. He's on a 1-fight winning streak. He is 1-1, but really only 1-0, if you ask me, since 2022. Because the one loss was an injury loss to Yair in the first bout with a shoulder injury, but that didn't really count in my book. 8 of his 16 wins are via submission. 2 of his 3 losses are via knockout. But again, it only should be 1 because of that shoulder injury loss. Now, Diego is an orthodox fighter. He has a black belt in BJJ. 3 of his last 4 fights have also been fight of the night or performance of the night. I'm telling you, certified banger. Diego's been showing up and showing out. He was the 2023 Newcomer of the Year. He's a Contender Series alum. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. 12 of his 24 wins are via submission, 10 via knockout. So 22 of his 24 fights via finish. And he also is sporting a 3.5-inch reach advantage. Now, Diego may have the length and power advantage. I do believe Brian is the better, more technical boxer. I think that's going to pay huge dividends in this fight. Plus, Brian is very durable. He's proven. He excels longer the fight goes on. And he has fought the best competition the featherweight division has to offer. Alexander Volkanovski, absolutely the best featherweight ever, and Max Holloway. But both men are really good with their BJJ. I believe Brian will have the wrestling grappling advantage. When it comes to absolute BJJ, I mean, it's going to be close. Diego's is pretty damn slick. He's got that long, lengthy build, which could be an advantage. But I could see Brian maybe mixing in some takedowns, looking to get top control and wear on Diego, because Movsar Evloev showed that could work. But I'm expecting Diego to be measured in this fight. He's going to look for those big shots. I'm not sure he's going to be able to get into the BJJ positions. I do think this will be more of a standing fight. That's why I'm favoring Brian's boxing. But again, there's levels to this game. You know, he came in against Movsar, who's not the best of strikers, still a really good fighter, prove himself. You know, he's dominated, but the level of T-City to Sadiq, no offense to Sadiq, there's again levels to this game. But I'm hoping it goes 3 rounds in a beautiful striking match. This does have potential to be fight of the night. I'm taking another underdog. He should never be an underdog. The fact that Yair Rodriguez and Diego Lopez are favored against Brian Ortega, T-City, show him what's up. I'm taking the underdog, and he's coming to eat. We also putting Brian on that parlay with confidence. We marking that ish down, and we getting that bread. Then the main event of the evening. We have Alex Poatan Pereira, 36 years old with a 10-2 record, taking on Yuri Prochazka, 31 years old with a 34-1 record, and then numero uno next to his name. Now, the first matchup, I was backing this fight heavily. I was saying this is the fight of the year candidate. It's going to deliver. It didn't quite deliver that way, but the walkouts, just the two different warriors, the warrior and the samurai, the first round was absolutely entertaining. Now, it sounded like before Conor pulled out, this was actually going to take place at Abu Dhabi in like October, but then it was going to be at 305 in Perth. Now they are all the way to 303. So these guys really haven't had a ton of time. Both fighters accepting this on short notice. Alex battling the broken toes. Either way, I expect another aggressive performance by both men and probably another round 1 or 2 finish. Breaking it down, Alex has a kickboxing style. He's an orthodox fighter. He trains out of Teixeira MMA and fitness. He has a black belt in kickboxing, a black belt in BJJ. He is the former UFC middleweight champion. He has had 1 successful title defense at light heavyweight. He has the shortest time and fewest bouts to win championships in 2 divisions in UFC history. It only took him 736 days or 7 bouts. He's the first and only fighter to win the UFC middleweight and light heavyweight championships. He had the fewest MMA bouts to become a 2-division UFC championship. It only took him 11. 3 of his last 6 fights have been performance of the night. As you know, Poatan, he shows up, he shows out. He had the latest knockout in UFC middleweight fight at 2 minutes and 1 second of round 5 against Israel Adesanya. He was the 2022 Male Fighter of the Year, 2023 Glory Hall of Fame inductee, and he's got some accolades for Glory. He was the 2021 light heavyweight champ, the 2019 interim champ, the 2017 middleweight champ. He had 5 defenses as a middleweight champ, and he was the 2014 middleweight tournament winner. He was the 2019 Glory Fighter of the Year, and he had the 2017 Kickboxing Fight of the Year against Israel Adesanya. He's on a 3-fight winning streak, all at light heavyweight. 8 of his 12 wins are via knockout, and he is a Jungle Fight and LFA alum. Now, Yuri has a Muay Thai style. He's the former light heavyweight champ. 4 of his 5 UFC fights have been performance of the night. Guy with the crazy striking angles. He's showing up. He's showing out. Samurai style. He had the 2022 Fight of the Year against Alex Coach Glover Teixeira. He's the first champion from Czech Republic. He is a Fight Nights Global alum and a Risen alum. He was a Risen former champion with 1 successful title defense. He's on a 1-fight winning streak, 4-1 in the UFC. Crazy to think. 26 of his 30 wins via knockout, and 3 of his 4 losses are also via knockout. He will die on the sword. He will take calf kicks till he can't walk to knock your ass out. So to knock out or be knocked out for the samurai. Now, not only has Yuri already fought Alex, but he fought his coach Glover, so they have game planned him many times since 2022. There was also supposed to be a Yuri-Glover rematch, but then Yuri got hurt. That never came about. So Glover is all but familiar. That's majority of Yuri's UFC career, honestly. But let's take a step just to appreciate the greatness. People are like, oh my God, Connor's gone. This card sucks. Like this new main event. This shit has history on the lines. These 2 men are so accomplished in such little time in the UFC. Record-breaking shit that potentially may never be matched. Especially because they came in a little bit older of age. Yuri in his prime, just about to hit his prime. Alex, 35 or something, 34. So Yuri's just now entering his prime. I think people forget that. And Alex is at the back end of his. Alex only has 8 UFC fights for him to win the middleweight strap. Brand new UFC fighter, not knowing how to, avoid takedowns or nothing. But after 4 UFC fights, he then lost it. And then won the UFC light heavyweight strap after 7 fights. And only 2 fights after he lost the middleweight belt. So 7 fights to be a 2-time champ. 2 fights later, he lost his belt at middleweight. Now he is a light heavyweight champion. This will be his 3rd fight for the strap and only his 6th UFC fight. The winner of this is going to have such crazy accolades. The challenge is the loser might not get a chance at a rematch, no matter who wins. This could eventually be a fight again. Let's say Yuri wins. Alex probably won't get an immediate rematch, but if he keeps cleaning house, they're going to have to match up again. But we just don't see that happen very often. The winner's going to have the belt and is going to be an absolute problem in this division for some time, especially Yuri as he's only 31 years old. The problem for this matchup is Yuri has not fought very logical the past few fights. He's won 1, he's lost 1. One of the loss was to Alex in the first matchup. If you want to beat Poatan, you need to grapple with him. You got to be measured. You have to have your hands up and have good defense, and you have to stay out of range from his big shots. And his nice low calf kicks, one of the best in the game. Yuri, obviously bouncing around with his hands down, striking at crazy angles is just the weirdest shit you've ever seen, the most unorthodox scrapper. You keep doing that, you're going to open yourself up, and you're going to get landed a finishing shot from Poatan. Now, if he could push forward and get Alex up against the cage, look to get takedowns, wear out Alex, that's obviously going to pay massive dividends for him. Yuri did that with Glover Teixeira. He grappled the grappler, and it worked out well. In the first fight, though, and in the Rakic fight, Yuri has stuck with that wide, bouncy stance. He's had his leg literally chopped off. So bad to the point where his leg is completely compromised. That is not sustainable, and you cannot do that and hope to land a knockout shot. That's only going to work so many times. You would think, though, with another chance at the belt, and knowing that you've lost to the dude twice, you would probably change up your game plan. Watching the MMA Hour and how he's like, I just know, you got to have confidence, you got to go with that. I don't think he's going to fight. He's just going to let his fighting style come out. I just have a feeling he's going to come forward, throw until one man is standing. Your leg's getting chopped. I don't care. I'm coming at you. You're coming at me. I'm coming at you. And it's just going to be those wild swing and misses. And there's going to just be a wild striking savagery of a fight. 2 warriors going at it until one man dies on his sword. That's what I think is going to happen. I would love to see this go 5 rounds. That would put it in Fight of the Year candidate. But I think Yuri is going to slay the giant, Poatan, or be slain. For that reason, I am picking against Yuri, which I picked him in the first fight. I am taking Alex Poatan Pereira and still. Well, I'm hyped up for International Fight Week. I've been to 2 of them. It's usually on my birthday weekend. It's happened a little earlier this year. Bummed to not be there in person. I wasn't going to go with the Conor McGregor prices. The prices are still high. UFC needs to get away from the Apex, do regional locations so you can actually afford to go to these damn things these days. But next weekend, we have the holidays off, 4th of July. You know, hug your loved ones, have a couple beverages. But then we have a fight night in Denver. Thank God it's location-based. It was supposed to be Rose and Macy, but now we are getting Rose and Tracy Cortez. A pretty decent fight night card. But golly, what a show. 303 this weekend, PFL action and more. I'm your host, Shane Gillette, episode 4. See you next week.